the crash and the stranger. The sky over the alien moon was never quiet. Purple clouds rolled like waves above black mountains, and electric storms danced across the thin atmosphere. No one came here by choice, not anymore. But today, something broke through the clouds. A fireball streaked across the sky, screaming as it fell. It wasn't a meteor, it was a ship. Or what was left of one. Vela saw it from her cave in the cliffs. She stood up slowly, her long fingers gripping the stone. Her silver eyes reflected the flame as it fell. "That's a human pod," she whispered. She shouldn't have known that. She had never seen one in person, but the shape, the way it fell, it matched the old images hidden in forbidden archives. Vela grabbed her healing kit and ran. The ground shook when the pod hit. Dust and ice sprayed into the air. Vela covered her mouth and stepped closer. The pod was broken, its outer shell torn and smoking. One of the doors was half open. Something moved inside. She hesitated. Her kind didn't help outsiders, especially not humans. They were the ghosts of war, the reason her world had burned so many years ago. But something pulled at her. A voice deep inside said, "Go." She climbed into the wreckage. Inside was smoke, heat, and blood. The lights flickered weakly. A body lay on the floor. A man, tall, heavy with muscle, his skin pale under the burns. His breathing was weak. His blood was red. Human. Vela touched his chest gently. His heart was still beating. "I shouldn't," she said out loud. "But I can't leave you." She worked fast. She stopped the bleeding from his side, sprayed burn patches, and wrapped his broken arm. But then she noticed something else. His lower abdomen just above the hips. There was a deep wound right between his legs. But this wasn't like the others. Her eyes narrowed. The flesh there. It shimmered faintly like metal under skin. It pulsed once, then stopped. Her hand froze above it. That wasn't a normal injury. That wasn't even a normal human. Vela's breath caught in her throat. She leaned closer. What she saw made her blood run cold. There were ancient symbols carved along the edges of the wound. Tiny. Almost invisible. Symbols from the old tongue. A language her people had not used in 1,000 years. A language only passed down in whispers and stories. Her mind raced. Why would a human carry these marks? Who was he? Then, without warning, the man's eyes opened. Vela jumped back. His eyes, green, bright, too alive, looked straight into hers. He tried to speak, but only a broken sound came out. His lips moved again. She leaned closer. "What did you say?" His mouth barely moved, but she heard it. Vailsha. Her blood turned to ice. Vailsha was not a word any human should know. It meant bonded soul in the old tongue. A sacred word, only used during ancient rites, during life-bonding rituals. No outsider should know it. No one had spoken it to her before. The man's head fell back. He passed out. Vela stared at him, shaking. She wanted to leave. She wanted to run far from this cursed pod and the human inside it, but she couldn't. Instead, she reached out and touched his face. His skin was hot, but not with fever. He was changing. She didn't know how, or why, but something ancient was waking inside him. "I have to hide you," she whispered, "before they find out you're here." She lifted him with difficulty. He was heavier than she expected. As she dragged him through the ice tunnels, the word he had spoken kept echoing in her head. Vailsha, a bond, a calling, and it had started with a wound no human should carry, and a secret no alien should have ever seen. Forbidden anatomy, the cave was dark, but safe. Thick stone walls hid it from the skies, and long tunnels beneath the earth led deep into forgotten ruins. Vela had lived here for 3 years, alone, healing injured animals, studying ancient texts, and hiding from the war-hungry leaders of her kind. She never expected to bring a human here. Yet now one lay on her healing table, silent, breathing slow but steady. His name was still a mystery, but his presence filled the cave like a storm waiting to break. Even unconscious, his body radiated heat and strange energy. She could feel it in her bones like static in the air before lightning strikes. And that wound between his legs, no normal injury, no simple tear in flesh. It was something more. Vela leaned over him, hands trembling slightly as she peeled back the temporary seal she had applied during the rescue. Her silver fingers moved with care, brushing away blood and burned skin. Beneath it, the wound glowed faintly, like a deep scar etched with light. The symbols she had seen earlier were still there, now clearer. They didn't just mark his body. They were his body. His tissue had formed around them as if he'd been born with them. She didn't want to believe it, but there was no other explanation. This man, this human, was carrying something from the old tongue within his own flesh, something that only the ancients had ever used, something that had not been spoken, written, or remembered since before the war that shattered the stars. Vela stood back and wiped her hands. She paced the floor of the cave, heart pounding. Her mind screamed for her to report this to the Council of Sires. A human with ancient symbols embedded in his body was no accident. It could mean war. It could mean worse. But she couldn't report it, not yet. Not until she knew more. She turned and looked at the stranger again. His chest rose and fell with deep, steady breaths. A strong body. A warrior's build. But his face was soft, peaceful, young. He couldn't be more than 30 cycles old by human standards. What had he seen? What had been done to him? Vela walked over to her scanner and pulled out a thin rod covered in blinking lights. She returned to the human side and held the scanner just above his abdomen. A soft hum filled the air. Numbers and glyphs flashed across her screen. Then she froze. Embedded deep in his tissue, past the bones and veins, was a string of code. DNA markers, but not human ones. Not entirely. They matched something else. Something lost. The scanner beeped. Again. One long, high-pitched note. A warning. A lock. The code inside him was encrypted, protected by a barrier only accessible by someone carrying the same gene signature. Someone like her. Vela's throat tightened. She scanned herself. Another beep. Perfect match. She stumbled back, eyes wide in disbelief. It wasn't just a wound. It was a message, a beacon. And somehow her blood was the key. That shouldn't be possible. She had never met a human before. Her people had wiped out the last of them, or so they believed over 100 cycles ago. Yet here was one. And not just alive. Linked to her. A sudden cough echoed through the cave. Vela spun around. The man was waking. His fingers twitched. His head turned. Slowly, his eyes opened. Green, clear, confused. He stared at the ceiling, for a moment then at her. You, he whispered. Vela stepped forward. You're safe now. You crashed. You were injured. He tried to sit up but winced and fell back with a groan. She reached to steady him, but he flinched. No, he said, struggling to speak. Where am I? Vela hesitated. You're on the outer moon of Relith. Hidden sector. Unmapped. The man frowned. I don't remember getting here. Do you remember your name? He was silent for a long time. Then softly, Cole. I think my name is Cole. Vela nodded. Cole, you're not safe out there. Not with what's inside you. His brow furrowed. Inside me? What do you mean? She paused, searching for the right words. There's a mark on your body, ancient, forbidden. My people would kill to erase it. But I think you were meant to carry it. Cole's hand moved to his abdomen. It's always hurt. Ever since I was a child, like something was burning from the inside. Vela's breath caught. It had been there all along. This wasn't an accident. Cole had been made for something. Something dangerous. She sat down beside him, unsure of how to say what came next. There's a code inside you, she said quietly. And my blood. It's the only thing that can unlock it. Cole's eyes widened. Then, somewhere above the cave, the sky cracked open with the sound of thunder. Vela looked up. They're coming, she whispered. Someone knows you're here. Chased through stars. The alarm started low, just a soft hum echoing through the tunnels. But Vela's heart knew what they meant. That sound hadn't been heard in her cave for years. It wasn't a natural sound. It wasn't wind or animals or storm. It was the old tech, hidden tech, a proximity warning from the war era. Something or someone had entered the moon's orbit. She moved quickly, grabbing her scanner, cloak, and emergency packs. Cole was still weak, but the color had returned to his face. He watched her as she prepared, sensing the change in her energy even if he didn't understand it yet. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice rough but more stable now. "They found you," Vela said, not stopping her work. "Something is tracking your genetic signal. I think they've been searching for you for a long time, and now they know exactly where to. Look." Cole pushed himself up with effort. His body trembled, but he managed to sit. "I don't understand." "Who? Why?" Vela looked at him then, her silver eyes shining with something between fear and determination. "I don't know who they are, not yet. But I know one thing, they're not coming to rescue you, they're coming to claim you." She helped him stand. He leaned on her heavily at first, but with each step, his strength returned, unnaturally fast. It was like his body was repairing itself, or adapting. The tunnels beneath her cave were ancient and long forgotten. Vela had mapped them years ago, memorizing every twist and passage. They led to the ruins of a once great city, buried after the war, sealed in silence. But even stone could not hide them forever. As they moved deeper into the earth, the shadows grew longer. The walls were lined with carvings, images of the old world, of winged beings, of humans and aliens standing side by side. It was hard to believe those days had ever existed. Most of her kind called them myths, lies. But now, walking beside a human who carried codes of the ancients in his very skin, Vela wondered if the old stories were more than just forgotten dreams. Cole touched the wall gently as they passed. "I've seen these before," he said. Vela stopped. "Where?" "In my sleep. In visions. They come like memories, but they're not mine. They feel older." She stared at him. "That shouldn't be possible." He nodded slowly. "I know, but it's happening." The sound of distant engines echoed above them, shaking dust from the ceiling. They were out of time. "We need to reach the lower gate," Vela said, taking his hand. "There's a skimmer there. It hasn't flown in years, but if it starts, it might get us beyond the mountains." Cole followed, trusting her now. He had no choice, and somewhere deep inside something told him she was the only person in the galaxy who could help him understand what he was becoming. When they reached the gate, it was half buried in rock. Vela cleared the console with a swipe of her palm. The old lights flickered to life, dim, blue, and ancient, and the skimmer sat in the chamber ahead, sleek and dust-covered. She ran to it, opening the hatch with a hiss. "Get in," she shouted. As Cole climbed aboard, a sudden explosion rocked the ceiling. Fire rained down from above. Vela slammed the door shut just as the outer wall cracked open. A drone, black and sharp-edged, hovered outside. It scanned the room with red beams. Vela dove into the pilot seat and slammed her hand on the ignition crystal. The skimmer groaned, then roared to life. A burst of light shot from the engines. The drone fired, but they were faster. The skimmer shot through the emergency tunnel, scraping walls, dodging falling rock, and bursting into the open sky. Lightning split the clouds above. Behind them, ships descended like vultures, black, silent, and hungry. "They're not military," Cole said, gripping the edge of the seat. "Those aren't Earth ships, and they're not yours either." Vela didn't answer. She knew. These were harvesters, ancient remnants of the genetic war. Not loyal to any planet, not part of any nation. They served only one cause, the recovery and control of designed assets. Which meant one thing. Cole wasn't just human. He was created. As the skimmer raced through the clouds, Vela turned to him, her voice steady, even over the roar of wind and engine. There's something inside you, Cole. Something they want. Something dangerous. Cole's jaw tightened. Then we need to find out what it is before they use it. The sky opened before them, stars stretching across the horizon. But behind, the darkness followed, relentless. And Cole knew the truth now, burning at the edge of his mind. Whatever was inside him wasn't sleeping anymore. It had woken up. The memory vault. The winds of the Deadlands howled across the empty surface of the moon, lifting dust like ghosts. Far below, in the oldest strata of the world, where no sunlight had reached in 1,000 years, Vela guided the skimmer toward a sheer rock face hidden within a ravine. From the outside, it looked like nothing, just cracked stone, half-eaten by time. But her ancestors had left more than scars in the earth. They had left doors. Cole stood beside her in the cockpit, his hand resting lightly on the wall as if listening to the humming of the engines. Something in him had changed since the escape. His posture had grown steadier, more alert, as if the chase had woken instincts that had slept too long. His eyes burned with questions he didn't yet know how to ask. Vela said nothing as she activated the signal key on her bracelet. The cliffside rippled. The rock shimmered, then dissolved into light. Behind it, a tunnel of perfect symmetry stretched inward, carved by machines older than the war, older than memory. "What is this place?" Cole asked. Vela hesitated. "A vault," she said finally. "Not just a shelter, not a base. It's a memory vault. It holds knowledge that was locked away during the final years of the Great Collapse. My people sealed it to stop a war. Now, we need it to understand what you are." They stepped from the skimmer, and the door sealed behind them. Phew. Air inside the vault was cold and dry, untouched for centuries. As they walked deeper, lights blinked to life, soft white pulses that followed their footsteps. The floor was smooth. The walls shimmered with strange metal etched with moving glyphs. They passed statues, tall, humanoid forms with features too blended to belong to just one species. Some bore wings, some had dual spines. All were marked with the same symbols that glowed from within Cole's body. "It feels familiar," Cole said quietly, brushing his fingers along the wall. "Like I've walked here before. But that's not possible, right?" Vela glanced at him. "Maybe not in this lifetime," she said. "But if you were created with memory code, you may carry echoes of others who came before you. The vault might be responding to that." They reached the heart of the structure, an immense circular chamber, walls lined with crystal consoles and memory strands that floated in the air like ribbons of light. At the center stood a pedestal with a sloped interface glowing faintly. Vela stepped forward and placed her hand on the panel. It rejected her. She frowned. Then Cole reached out almost without thinking and touched it. The vault came alive. Every strand of light flared. Images burst from the crystals, holograms of stars, of ships, of ancient figures speaking in a language long dead. The air buzzed with low-frequency tones that resonated in their bones. And then the voice came. Not from a speaker, not from a machine, but from inside the vault itself. A voice both male and female, old and new. "Welcome, hybrid core. Welcome, catalyst." Vela's breath caught. "Hybrid core," the voice continued. "You are the final vessel of Project Vielsha. Initiated during the collapse era, terminated upon treaty breach. You are not supposed to awaken, but the seal has been broken." Cole stepped back. "What does it mean by vessel? I'm not a—" "You are," the voice said, almost gently. "You were never born. You were grown. You are the last attempt to merge species, human and Xelan. a union once seen as the only hope for survival. Vela stared at him. That's why you carry both codes. You're not just a human with a wound. You are the wound, the final attempt to heal what our peoples destroyed. Cole felt like the room was spinning. Memories that weren't his flickered behind his eyes. Machines, needles, a woman's voice whispering lullabies in a language he couldn't understand. He staggered, and Vela caught him. The vault dimmed slightly. Your activation has triggered tracking protocols. The old ones will come. The harbinger is already near. You must complete the bond. Vela blinked. What bond? The pedestal opened. Inside was a crystal dagger glowing with light. The bond of recall. When flesh meets flesh and memory is shared, only then will the path be clear. Cole looked at her. Is this what you meant when you said your blood was the key? Vela nodded slowly. We're connected somehow. You and I. Not by accident. Maybe I was meant to find you. The vault began to shake. Dust fell from the ceiling. The harbinger is near, the voice warned. Complete the bond or perish. Vela reached for the dagger. Cole didn't stop her, and as the blade touched his skin, and then hers, the world exploded with light. Echoes of the first species, the light swallowed them, not a flash, not a burst, but a deep living radiance that wrapped around Vela and Cole like molten memory. The moment the crystal dagger touched their blood, the vault obeyed a command buried, too deep to be spoken. It recognized them, not as enemies, not even as visitors, but as returning pieces of itself. The bond had begun. Vela's scream was silent, trapped in a space beyond sound. She felt her mind split open, not in pain, but in revelation. Memories surged through her. Not hers, but ancient and wild, filled with stars, screams, joy, and betrayal. Her body stood still, yet her soul was pulled backward through time, drawn into the echo of lives that had shaped this entire galaxy. She saw them, humans and Xalans, standing side by side on a green world long dead. Their skin glowed with energy, their voices merged in harmony. They had once created something together, someone, a being with both bloodlines, stronger than either, wise beyond years. They had called it Vaelsha, the union of light and shadow. Not a weapon, not a god, a bridge. But fear destroyed them. Fear always did. She watched as leaders on both sides turned against the peace. They feared losing control. They saw the bond as a threat, not salvation. And so they ended it, with fire, with betrayal. The first hybrid died, burned alive in front of both nations. Cole was there too, inside the same storm of memory. He was no longer watching, he was reliving. He felt the hands of scientists on his skin. He heard whispered lullabies in 2 languages. He saw himself, growing in a chamber, surrounded by silence, taught to speak by machines. He had never had a mother. He had never had a home, only handlers, only missions. But someone long ago had looked at him not as a tool, but as hope. That someone had Vela's eyes. In the vault's memory, a young alien healer had defied orders to protect the first hybrid. She had died trying. Cole remembered her face now. He remembered the pain. That was the memory written into his flesh. The light began to fade. Slowly the present returned. Vela gasped, stumbling to her knees. Her body shook, not from weakness, but from the overwhelming truth. Cole dropped beside her, sweat pouring down his face, his muscles twitching with energy. They looked at each other in silence. Something between them had changed. A feeling beyond words now linked their thoughts, their fears, their hopes. It wasn't just empathy, it was fusion. You saw it, didn't you? Vela whispered. He nodded. We were made to finish what they started. Their skin still shimmered faintly where the dagger had touched them. The wound between Cole's legs had sealed completely, no longer a scar but a symbol. The same one carved in the center of the vault. Then came the tremor. Not from the vault, but from above. The air turned colder. The crystals around them dimmed. Shadow passed across the ceiling like a crawling eclipse. "He is here," the voice of the vault warned. "The Harbinger." Vela stood, her legs steady now. "Who is he?" "One who was once like you but chose domination over balance. He betrayed the bond and erased the future. He will not allow another." Cole's fists clenched. "Then we have to fight him." "You cannot win in your current state," the voice said. "You must finish the rite." A new door opened at the far side of the chamber. Cold air poured through it, laced with static. It led downward, deeper into the planet's bones. Vela didn't wait. She took Cole's hand, and they moved forward. The next chamber was vast, like a cathedral carved into the earth. Floating crystals hovered in precise orbits, each pulsing with captured memory. In the center stood a platform with 2 stone seats, thrones not meant for rulers, but for equals. The walls were covered in living vines of light, all leading back to those seats. Vela and Cole stepped forward together. The moment they sat, the chamber pulsed. The vines of light surged toward them and wrapped gently around their limbs. They weren't restrained. They were connected. The room darkened, and then came the voices. Hundreds, thousands. Every bond that had ever been attempted, every soul that had ever tried to bridge the great divide between species. They poured into Cole and Vela, not as noise, but as understanding. They saw what worked, what failed, what broke, and then they saw why. The bond was never just about flesh. It wasn't about breeding or power. It was about choice, about love, about standing together even when the stars were burning. Cole reached across the small space between their seats and took her hand. "I choose this," he said. Vela looked into his eyes. "So do I." The chamber answered. Light exploded from the platform. Above ground, in the orbiting skyships, the Harbinger felt it. His face twisted into rage. "They completed the bond," he snarled. "It begins again." The betrayer returns. The Harbinger stood alone in the command deck of the obsidian vessel that hovered like a dying star above the ancient moon. His armor, blackened with time and grafted with living metal, pulsed with cold intelligence. His face, once Zeylan, once noble, was now a mask of cruelty, carved by centuries of betrayal and unchecked ambition. His eyes, however, burned with something older than hate. They burned with envy. He had once stood where Cole now stood, chosen, bonded, revered. But he had rejected the bond. He had shattered it before it could take root. Not because he feared its power, but because he coveted it. He wanted the gift of unity, not to share, but to own. Now he felt the pulse ripple through space and bone, the completed bond awakening far below. He could almost hear it, like a heartbeat echoing through a tomb. The two had done it. The human and the healer. Together they had finished what he had destroyed long ago. The Harbinger turned, his cloak trailing like smoke, and spoke to the ship's mind. "Bring me to them. I will unmake the bond myself." Below, deep within the vault, Vela and Cole stood in the aftermath of light. Their hands still clasped, their bodies pulsed with the aftershock of union. They weren't just bonded, they were transformed. Not physically, not in some monstrous or divine way, but in essence. Their thoughts brushed one another like warm winds. Their instincts aligned. They no longer needed to speak to understand. Yet, with this new closeness came a heavy weight. "He knows," Vela said, her voice no longer afraid but firm. Cole nodded. "He's coming." The bond had shown them everything. The rise and fall of the first hybrid, the sabotage that followed, and the identity of the one who had led the betrayal. The Harbinger was no myth. He had once been a respected guardian, one of the first candidates for bonding, but he had chosen power over unity, division over peace, and he had lived on in the shadows of history, feeding off ruin, ensuring the bond would never rise again. Now he was coming to finish the job. The vault responded to the threat. Walls shifted, revealing hidden platforms, defensive systems older than civilization itself. Crystal turrets emerged from the floor and humming orbs filled the air, charged with protective energy. But even this ancient sanctuary was unsure. The Harbinger had once walked these halls. He knew their language. He knew how to twist their purpose. "We can't fight him head-on," Vela said. "Not yet." "But we don't have to run anymore either," Cole replied, eyes scanning the room. "We need to draw him into the memory core." Vela raised an eyebrow. "You want to confront him inside the vault's echo field?" Cole nodded. "If we can anchor his mind to the memory stream, he'll be forced to face the truth. All the memories he's buried, all the pain he's caused. It may not kill him, but it might break him." They moved quickly, hands still joined, letting the bond guide them. The path to the memory core wound through tunnels where light bent strangely and whispers brushed the edges of consciousness. The core itself was a chamber like no other, circular, with a mirrored floor and a sky made of stars. In its center floated a sphere of pure memory, swirling with glowing strands, millions of lifetimes frozen in time. They prepared the trap. Above them, the air cracked open like glass. The Harbinger descended in silence, wrapped in energy and darkness. He landed in the outer vault without a sound, his armor absorbing the kinetic shock with ease. As he walked, the ground beneath him withered. The old defenses flickered and fell away. He was part of the system. Corrupted code flowed in his veins. He found them in the memory core, standing like statues of light before the mirrored floor. "So," he said, voice deep and smooth, like poisoned honey. "The last hybrid lives, and the traitor's blood still lingers." Vela stepped forward. "You fear what we are. That's why you've hunted us." He smiled, cruel and tired. "No, I fear nothing. I envy you." His gaze locked with Cole's. "You carry what should have been mine." Cole held his ground. "You had your chance, you destroyed it." "Because it was flawed," the Harbinger snapped. "Unity is a lie. Bonding weakens the will. I chose strength, and I survived." Cole glanced at Vela. The bond between them surged. "You survived alone," Cole said. "But you've never lived." The Harbinger roared and leapt toward them. They stepped aside, just in time. He crashed into the center of the floor, exactly where the trap had been set. The memory sphere burst open. Strands of light wrapped around the Harbinger's limbs, piercing his mind, dragging him into the sea of memory. He screamed, thrashing against the visions. He saw himself, young, hopeful, standing at the edge of peace. He saw himself betraying that hope. And he saw what could have been, what should have been, had he chosen unity. The chamber shook. His armor cracked. The betrayal inside him, long buried, surfaced like a sickness. Cole and Vela stood above him, watching. "I see now," the Harbinger whispered, voice broken. "I didn't kill the bond. I killed myself." And then, for the first time in centuries, he wept. The memory stream faded. The vault fell silent, and the last shadow of the old war collapsed. The bond beyond species. For the first time in remembered history, the vault breathed peace. It hummed quietly, no longer in alarm or in warning, but in something deeper. Recognition, perhaps, or release. The memory strands that once floated violently in the air now settled like soft ribbons, curling gently around the edges of the chamber. The vault had seen war. It had seen betrayal, death, and centuries of silence. But now it witnessed something it had long been built to protect: healing. The Harbinger lay still upon the mirrored floor. His breathing was shallow, his armor cracked and flickering. No longer the shadowed god he had made himself into, but a broken reflection of the past he had tried to erase. The memories had stripped him bare. Every choice, every betrayal, every face he had forgotten, they had returned to him in waves, and in their light he saw what he truly was. Not a monster, not a savior, just a man who feared being less than whole. Cole knelt beside him, not with a weapon, not with revenge, but with understanding. You weren't wrong to want power, Cole said quietly, but you were wrong to think it had to come without connection. The Harbinger's eyes opened, slowly. There was no hatred left in them, only regret. I saw what you are, he rasped. What you could become, and it terrified me. Vela stepped forward, her presence like moonlight in the chamber's dim glow. It should have inspired you, she said. We are not perfect, but together, we are possible. The Harbinger's gaze flickered between them. Human and alien, bonded not by chains but by choice. A new beginning wrapped in old scars. His lips parted as if to speak, but no sound came. A final breath passed his lips, and the light in his chest dimmed. He didn't die as a villain nor as a hero. He died as a warning and a lesson. Silence fell again. Then the vault began to shift. The crystals around the memory core brightened. One by one, ancient systems awakened. Platforms rising, energy streams dancing in elegant arcs, old machinery stirring from its eternal slumber. A pulse echoed through the walls and out into the stars. Vela's eyes widened. The bond is complete, she said. The vault is broadcasting again. Cole looked up. Broadcasting to who? Before she could answer, the star map above them opened like a blooming flower. Dozens of pinpoints flared to life, ships, stations, and worlds across. Distant systems, all places that had once been part of the bonded alliance. Many were abandoned. Others flickered with signs of life. A deep voice filled the chamber, not the vault, but from beyond it. A signal, ancient and crystalline. Signal received. The Vielsha bond has been restored. Directive path open. Awaiting instructions from bonded core. Cole turned to Vela. It's waiting on us. Vela nodded slowly, realization settling into her bones. The hybrid bond wasn't just a biological experiment. It was the key to unifying old civilizations. One pair, bonded by choice, could command the peace engines across the galaxy. Not with war, but with will. She turned to Cole, eyes steady. We're not just survivors anymore. We're stewards. The skimmer chamber opened behind them. Wind blew through the passage, clean, fresh, carrying with it the scent of rain and new air. Outside, the skies above the moon had cleared. The storm fleets had fled. The stars shone freely for the first time in generations. They climbed aboard the skimmer, but it was no longer the fragile relic they had arrived in. The vault had restructured it, integrating new tech, guiding systems, and protective fielding. It hummed beneath their feet like it recognized them. Cole stood at the helm, hand resting lightly on the controls. Vela sat beside him. They didn't need to speak. The bond carried thoughts, feelings, intent. Together, they set the course. Not toward Earth, not toward Zela, but toward the in-between, the place where something new could grow. As they lifted into the sky, the stars above shifted. A ripple moved through space like a silent drumbeat. The signal the vault had sent was spreading. Ancient satellites blinked awake. Shipyards lit up. Hibernating outposts pinged the coordinates of the bonded pair. The galaxy, once fractured, held its breath. In the cockpit, Vela watched Cole as he piloted, his hands calm, his eyes forward. She felt the warmth of the bond in her chest. Not just a tether, not just survival, but a promise. We will never be what they were, she said softly. But we don't have to be. He looked at her, the ghost of a smile on his lips. No, we'll be something better. And as the stars opened before them and the galaxy stirred from its long slumber, the legend of the last hybrid and the chosen catalyst began its next chapter. Not in fire, not in blood, but in hope.